Welcome. This is Gary Miranda again with some poems for what I hope is your listening enjoyment. The series of poems I'm going to share today all come from a 2-year stint in a federal program called Project Partner, the goal of which was to incorporate the arts into the public school curriculum. My particular assignment took place at Bessie Bucher School in Wenham, Massachusetts, a rural community north of Boston. I was originally assigned to the 6th grade, but I kept working my way down to the lower grades for 2 reasons. First, I wanted to find out where things went wrong, and secondly, I wanted to meet the kindergarten teacher, Patty Cassidy. I discovered that things start to go wrong in the 4th grade. 3rd graders will still pretty much try anything without worrying about how it looks. And Patty Cassidy, I'm happy to report, has been my wife for the last 45 years. It was in Patty's kindergarten class that I first met a little boy named Tom Moskovich. One of the things that Patty did with her class was to have them make spiral-bound books out of stories that they would dictate based on drawings they'd done. The drawings that Tom did and the text that he would dictate based on the drawings all centered around the theme of spiders and suns, suns being the solar, not the filial kind. When Patty shared Tom's book with me, I was struck by the fact that it was almost impossible to tell the spiders from the suns. Now, this is not all that strange when you consider the way a child might draw those two objects, namely a circle with rays or legs radiating from it. But when you consider the symbolic weight of the two objects, the difference is remarkable. A spider is a tiny black creature that many people are afraid of, and that often gets its power from the fact that you don't know where it is or might be. The sun is a huge, bright object that makes people happy, and then gets its power from the fact that it's always up there where it's supposed to be, just rolling around heaven all day. Also, we associate the sun with inspiration, and the spider with craft. The more I studied Tom's drawings, the more fascinated I became with the dynamic between the spiders and the suns. They were clearly enemies out to get each other, more often than not with poisons of some sort. I still have that book, and here are some samples of the text that Tom dictated. This is a spider stretching its legs in the sun. The sun is trying to burn it up because it is right on top of the sun, biting it. Or again, this is the black widow on the sun. The sun cannot talk, but it is trying to tell the black widow something because it is burning the black widow. Anyway, finally I decided that I was going to interview Tom and have him talk about the drawings. I recorded those interviews, and here is an excerpt that so impressed me that I used it as an epigraph in one of my poetry books. The sun doesn't like anything on it because it will make a lot of heat, especially a spider. And the spider would, when the spider gets so mad, I just know when the spider's on the sun, he has enough thread to wrap around the sun so it won't shine anymore. And I don't know about that, but I know it happens. Isn't that wonderful? When the spider's on the sun, he has enough thread to wrap around the sun so it won't shine anymore. And I don't know about that, but I know it happens. That's such a wonderful poem in itself that only a fool would try writing a poem about it. But in the words of William Butler Yeats, who am I that I should not seem for the song's sake a fool? Here is my poem, The Spiderweb Suns. Reflections on a Child's Drawings. Everything is spiders or suns. Some suns are spiders. Some spiders are webs silhouetted against the sun, a partial eclipse. The text is so full of spiders you forget, as you look at the drawings, how few spiders really appear on the page. Or you don't see them. The sun's in your eyes. Everything is poisonous, or as he puts it, the poisonous is everywhere. It stings. The spider stings. The sun stings the spider. You think of Stingray trying to make the connection. You imagine he has over his bed a webbed Japanese lantern which, turned on, turns into the sun. Yet, when he isn't drawing spiderweb suns, he seems just an ordinary child, a small person who counters your big person questions with sound logic. It's cork. Do you know where cork comes from? He thinks about this for a while, then says, it can come from bottles. You know he's right. You know, too, that his spiders will soon diminish, his webs unspin, his suns go down, all of them saved, perhaps, in his mother's closet, or in your own memory, which, eclectic, unpredictable, will conjure these images up in a flash some night when your courage fails, or your marriage, and knowing announce, oh, that sun, that spider. One of the things that Patty often did with her kindergarten class was to take them on field trips. And once I'd managed to get into her good graces, and it took some time, I would occasionally join them. This next poem grew out of one of those times. For some reason I never quite understood. The children were convinced that there was a local fox that might appear at any time. Patty, of course, tried to persuade them that foxes weren't dangerous, but to no avail. The poem is called Visibilities. It has two parts, only the first of which is based on the field trip experience, but I'm going to read both parts. Visibilities. 1. Fox. Not one of them has seen it, but the fox lives in the fields of these children's minds, as sure as real trees send roots their own size into the balding earth. Say the word fox, and their eyes become dim windows that ancient moths beat against from behind. Say flower, and they think foxglove. Song, and they sing, oh, the fox went out on a chilly night. One of them, Leslie, a little older, says, we could get back to the school before it got us. She's big on distances this year. The metric system, her mother moving to another state. It will do no good to tell her I was a child once myself, or that foxes are the least of her worries. All fear is equivocal. The only thing hers lacks is accuracy, and when did content ever count? Maybe, I suggest, we could get it to sit for a portrait. You could all paint it. Foxes don't do that, Seth says, serious, protective even, not telling me what they do. Lurk behind bushes like gargoyles, lewd, toothy, carnivorous. The strangers you don't take candy from, their eyes terrible stars burning, their mouths full of mucus, but why go on? I think of those alphabet foxes, Disneyish cute, and shy-eyed, not even sly. I think of the leopards that pagan priests invited, making them part of the ritual into the temple. The more I think, the more I like the fox these kids concoct, that will strike like a match, the blue-green of its eyes adding an edge to what we expect from fire, from foxes. Soon enough their fox will become our fox, but now, as they walk, the children tighten their circle around me, and I with its pupil frightened. Colin, the youngest, fingers the tail of my jacket. Seth discusses weather. Leslie looks up. Overhead, a jet trails a thin line of vapor that widens and reddens. The great eye of the sun burns in its socket. 2. Heron. Nearby, there's a pond where a blue heron constitutes news for the neighbors by its appearances and disappearances. Apparitions, I almost said. You'd think he's some dead Gloucester fisherman washed ashore, grown graceful in the aftermath of 50-odd years handling nets, while his fingers froze and his beard matted solid with salt spray. They call him Blue. He looks gray to me. I've only seen him twice. Once to a tall spray of cattails as I took a pee next to the pond's edge. Another day as I drove by and caught him in flight in my side mirror, his legs dangling behind him almost unwillingly, the way you feel getting up from a chair to do a chore you don't particularly want to. Later I learned that his mate, whom I've never seen, was stoned by some kids on their way home from school, fooling around, bored. The same kids who skate on the pond in winter, I suppose, making those swan-shaped S's on the ice. The woman who told me never had children, I could tell, the way her mouth curved down when she said the word kids, and her eyes flared. I thought for a moment she was the bird in question. Herons mate for life, she said, and if she was wrong, I hold that error high among the precious few things I know about that bird, or any bird. A poet I know, an ex-lover, says you have to catch them out of the corner of your eye. Herons, I mean. She's probably right. Still, I watch for this one whenever I drive by. The same way I watch for meaning to move slightly beneath the cover of everyday events, whose grace, too, has an edge of sadness to it. Not like swans, imposing their cool will on any landscape, but like herons, which always let us believe, if we want to, that they might be something else, a reed, a fleck of shadow changing shape in the wind, a thought, the things we love, visible like that. The next poem, called Witnessing, is also based on a field trip, one that I took alone with Patty in a field of milkweed in the hope of finding monarch butterfly chrysalides to bring back to her class. This occurred in the late spring of the last year of my stint at Bessie Bucher School. When I left shortly later, Patty came with me. All of her students wrote me little notes thanking me for being there. One little girl wrote, "Dear Mr. Miranda, thank you for coming to our school. We are sorry that you are leaving. You could have taken a dog, you could have taken a cat, but you're taking our teacher." What can I say? Here is the poem, Witnessing, for Patty. Beneath leaves of a plant that's named for milk, that bleeds milk, we search for chrysalides, things that I've never seen, but whose name I like. And I think, as I look, of all the things you've taught me to name, larkspur, loosestrife, sea lavender, plants called hens and chickens, butter and eggs, your eyes bright with such knowledge, as solid as nouns. Just so, you tell me now of creatures who choose the underbelly of these leaves to make wombs of, studded with gold, from which emerge monarchs that range the length of the Atlantic in hordes. One more fact I must have missed by skipping the 4th grade. And when today we find no trace of anything resembling this miracle you mention, and I'm about to say you made it up, you bend down, break a pod, and blow unlikely butterflies in the sky's face. Not black and orange like monarchs, but cloud-thought white, or like the way I mark my place when I read your eyes, which, witnessing, claim, this is the world. Try to learn its name. The final poem from my experience at Bessie Bucher is dedicated to a man named Alan Myers, who was principal at the school. Alan and I became close friends, despite the fact that we could not have been more different in temperament. Alan was a by-the-book administrator who, though he never came right out and said it, had reservations about Project Partner, all those flaky artist types invading his domain. In particular, he didn't at all buy into my interpretation of Tom Moskowitz's drawings about the spiders and the suns, which was that Tom was worried that the discipline of school, represented by the spider, had the power to destroy his creativity, represented by the sun. I didn't push it. Instead, I wrote this poem and dedicated it to Alan. The Role of the Arts in Education, for Alan Myers. Jacob, after wrestling an angel all night, awoke the following morning with a great feeling of exhilaration and a slight limp. Whoever wrote that story never said how this affected his later life, whether he had a hard time getting the girls or, like Lord Byron, overcompensated for the limp by becoming a roue, or if the handicap put him in poor stead for whatever he happened to do for a living. My own guess, as good as the next person's, is that he probably led a pretty normal life. Marital strife, bills, bad dreams. Except that his neighbors, unimpressed, had to remind him, look, the center of the universe you're not, Jake. Which, of course, he was, as were his neighbors, who, industrious and down to earth, spent their whole lives without even seeing an angel, let alone wrestling one. Thank you again for listening, and until next time, this is Gary Miranda saying, with Theodore Rethke, wake the happy words.